The dark truth you'll never believe, a short story of hope that haunts you forever. It was a cold night, under a sky thick with ominous clouds, when the unthinkable happened. The small town of Maplewood would soon unravel a mystery so dark that it would haunt its residents forever. Lights flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows on the streets, and every rustle of leaves felt like whispers from the unknown. A child's laugh echoed, cheerful and innocent, but it was quickly swallowed by a heavy silence. This was just the calm before the storm. When the townspeople awoke the next morning, they stumbled upon something that shattered their peaceful routine. There, in the heart of Maplewood, stood a dilapidated house that had been empty for decades. Its windows were shattered, and the door hung ajar as if inviting them in. A sense of dread washed over the crowd that gathered. Rumors swirled like autumn leaves in a whirlwind. People spoke in hushed tones about the last family who lived there, about the strange things they heard at night, whispers that turned into screams. Jimmy, a local teenager with an adventurous spirit, decided he couldn't resist the call. With a flashlight clutched in one trembling hand, he stepped into the dark abyss of the house. The air was stale, thick with the scent of decay. Each step creaked beneath his weight, awakening the ghosts of the past. He could practically feel their cold breath on his neck. What would he find in the grim corners of that darkened space? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As Jimmy moved deeper into the house, he found flickering shadows that raced across the walls. It felt alive, pulsating with secrets waiting to be uncovered. Suddenly, a low moan echoed from the upstairs, a sound so raw and painful that it froze his blood. His heart raced, pounding against his chest as he hesitated. Fear suffocated him, yet curiosity clawed at him. He had to know. Would he discover the truth of what happened here, or would the house claim him as one of its own? The thrum of energy in the room intensified, almost alive, vibrating with the weight of unsaid words. What was it waiting for? Would he leave with the haunting truth or remain forever trapped in the web of Maplewood's dark mystery? Jimmy took a deep breath, his mind racing. He felt the house's shadows whispering secrets he had yet to grasp. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a magnetic pull that drove him forward even as his instincts screamed to retreat. The moan echoed again, sending chills rippling down his spine, as if the very air around him crackled with a warning that he ascended the creaky staircase, each step a test of his courage. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam, illuminated briefly before surrendering to darkness once more. The upstairs corridor stretched before him, lined with doors, each one a doorway to the past that begged to remain closed. But Jimmy couldn't turn back now that he reached the first door, its wood aged and weathered. With shaking hands, he pushed it open. The room was empty, save for a tattered rug and peeling wallpaper that looked like it was ready to collapse. The air felt heavier here, pregnant with sorrow. In the far corner, something caught his attention, a small, locked trunk, caked in dirt and grime. His heart thudded with anticipation. What lay inside could change everything. As he knelt down to inspect it, a crash came from behind him. He spun around, flashlight flickering wildly, illuminating nothing but shadows. A deep sense of foreboding gripped him. Was he truly alone here? The moans had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence that felt alive. Hungry, determined, he turned back to the trunk. It had an old-fashioned lock, but something told him it could be opened. Jimmy searched for something solid in his pockets and pulled out a small screwdriver he usually used for school projects. With a deep breath, he wedged it into the lock and twisted. To his astonishment, the lock clicked open, like a long-held breath finally released. As he lifted the lid, a cloud of dust engulfed him, making him choke and cough. Through watery eyes, he peered inside. There was nothing but old family photos and decaying newspapers, but one item stood out: an antique necklace, glistening even in the gloom. It felt strangely familiar, as though it had a past that connected with him. His fingers trembled as he reached in to touch it. Suddenly, the room buzzed with a low hum, vibrating against his skin. The memories of laughter and whispers flooded his mind, familiar faces he didn't know but felt drawn to. He gasped, dropping the necklace as the vision became unbearable. Then he heard it again, a soft cry, but this time it was clearer, more urgent. "Help me!" A wave of panic crashed over him like a sudden tide. This was no playful ghost. Whatever lingered in this house wasn't he playing games. He needed to find out who was crying, but part of him screamed to run and never look back. The stillness that had enveloped the house shifted for a moment. He thought he could sense eyes watching him, an unseen presence jarring with his every movement. Who are you?" Jimmy called out, his voice shaking. There was no answer, but the air seemed to pulse with dread, and he felt the weight of 1,000 lost souls hanging in the balance. Would he be brave enough to press on? What awaited him beyond the door at the end of the hallway, where the soft sobs now beckoned him to step into the dark? The question lingered, thick in the air, as he mustered all the courage he had left. He had already crossed the threshold into this nightmare. Now, it was time to confront the truth head-on. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly in front of him, shadows dancing around Jimmy as if playing tricks on his mind. He took a tentative step toward the door at the end, the source of the sorrowful cries growing louder with each heartbeat. It was now or never. As he approached, the door loomed larger, warped and shadowy against the pale light from his flashlight. A shiver traced down his spine, a reminder that this was a threshold between tightly held secrets and an unknown terror. He reached for the doorknob, its cold metal sending jolts through his fingers. "Just open it," he whispered to himself, trembling with trepidation. The cries grew desperate, as if urging him on, pulling him into the darkness. The moment his hand turned the knob and he pushed the door open, an icy breeze swept past him, carrying an unmistakable scent of decay. Inside, the room appeared to be a nursery, but it was a graveyard of lost dreams. The once cheerful wallpaper was torn and faded, revealing stained patches beneath, remnants of a time where laughter would have filled the air. A crib lay in the corner, its slats broken, and next to it sat a dusty rocking horse that seemed to sway slightly, as if touched by unseeable hands. "Why are you crying?" Jimmy called into the gloom, his voice echoing off the walls. The cries crescendoed, a haunting symphony of pain mixed with longing. His heart raced, his mind struggling to comprehend how this silence had been hidden beneath layers of dust. Then, from the darkness, emerged a figure. A woman, shrouded in shadows, her eyes glistening but unfocused. Jimmy felt his stomach drop, a lump forming in his throat. He couldn't move, frozen in fear as her lips parted. They took my son." Her voice was as fragile as glass, shattering the silence around them. Jimmy took a step back, recoiling from the sorrowful weight of her words. The realization began to sink in a mother's grief. She continued, her hands clutching at the air. "I called out. I searched, but the house, it keeps him." As she reached toward him, a surge of emotion hit him like a wave. He could feel her despair, the burden of loss weighing down not just on her, but on the very walls of the room. It swirled around him, suffocating yet crying for understanding. "Who took him?" Jimmy managed to ask, his voice cracking. She only shook her head, an unending tempest swirling in her eyes. "It's all connected, the necklace." She pointed towards him, realization dawning on her face. "That's why they brought you here." Confusion clutched his heart. The necklace. He remembered the pull it had when he first touched it. An object connecting them across time. The truth was straining to break through like a dam ready to burst, but before he could ask more, the room seemed to darken, shadows stretching unnaturally, swirling around the woman like a wicked tide. The cries transformed into shrieks, a cacophony of anguish that filled the air, rising higher until Jimmy felt he might scream himself. Then, with a sudden crack, the ceiling above them split open. Light spilled in, illuminating the crypt of sorrow and grief. The woman gasped, the shadows recoiling, as if something had disturbed a slumbering beast. You must go. Find him. Save him before it's too late. Fear surged through him, a battle of instincts. Should he leave and search for answers or stay and potentially plunge deeper into this nightmare? With one last glance at her pleading face, he bolted for the door. As he crossed the threshold, he heard her voice again, echoing in a whisper, "Time is running out, you will see the truth." He stumbled down the hallway, heart pounding. What truth awaited him, and was the price of discovering it something he could handle? As he sprinted down the staircase, he could feel the house beginning to shake, alive with an energy both terrifying and vital. With each step, the question burned in his mind: could he save her son, or would he become another lost soul trapped within these cursed walls? He burst out into the entryway, breathless, his heart racing like a caged animal desperate to escape. The echoes of the woman's plea haunted him, reverberating through his mind. Find him. The hallway stretched before him, seemingly endless, as if the house itself were testing his resolve. A shudder ran down his spine, but he pushed the fear aside. Drawn by an instinct he didn't quite understand, he ran toward the front door, the only exit he could see. As he reached for the handle, an ice-cold gust swept through, sending waves of panic crashing over him. The door slammed shut with an eerie finality, leaving him trapped. He spun around, hands shaking, desperate to find another way out. "Think, Jimmy, think," he muttered under his breath. The cries echoed in his ears, desperation faded into determination. He glanced around the room, the shadows loomed closer, as if conspiring against him. His eyes darted, searching for a clue, a hint, anything. To his left, a staircase spiraled upward into a darkness that felt alive, almost sentient. Something told him he needed to go up. He took a deep breath, turned, and started up the stairs, his footsteps heavy, the wood creaking beneath him as if warning him to stop. The second floor was just as dim, the air thick with a musty smell that clung to his skin. He noticed a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, light spilling from its crack. The woman's words urged him forward. Time is running out. Each step felt monumental. He hesitated only briefly as he reached for the doorknob. A flash of doubt skittered through his mind, but he shook it off. He pushed the door open, heart pounding, prepared for whatever lay on the other side. Inside, he found a small room cluttered with toys. Wooden blocks lay scattered across the floor, a toy truck tipped on its side, and a book, its spine cracked, lay open as if waiting for someone to read it again. The sight made his heart ache. This was where the boy once played, where laughter had once lived. But now, it was a space steeped in despair. "Hello?" he called out, his voice quivering against the walls. "Is anyone here?" Silence answered him, a heavy void that felt suffocating. Then it happened. The temperature dropped suddenly. He could see his breath, a frosty cloud in the air. The shadows shifted and pooled in the corners of the room, twisting like malevolent spirits awakening from slumber. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of movement. Whirling around, the sight stole his breath. There, on the wall, a large outline flickered. It was a silhouette of a small boy, shadowy and indistinct yet undeniably real. "Help me!" the figure cried, sounding so desperate, so lost. It reached out, a tiny hand extended, fingers trembling. The sound of heartbeat-like thuds echoed, filling the room with an urgency that sent shivers through Jimmy's body. "Wait! I'm coming!" He rushed forward, but the figure faded, retreating into darkness. "No! Don't go!" he shouted, panic rushing through his veins. He stumbled, desperate, and tripped over the scattered toys. As he struggled to regain his footing, he felt a sharp pang of guilt. What was this place? What had happened in this cursed house? Before he could assess his thoughts, a harsh whisper slithered through the air. "The necklace, it binds them. It binds him." The hair on his neck stood on end as he spun around, looking for the source. The shadows twisted violently, and something dark loomed behind him, heavy and suffocating. It surged forward without warning, curling around his throat, squeezing the air from his lungs. Find the necklace. With one last burst of strength, he clawed at the darkness enveloping him, gasping as the grip loosened just enough for him to escape. Breathing heavily, he gazed around the room, heart racing. Where was the necklace? A part of him knew it was somehow the key to freeing the boy and the woman. But how was he supposed to find it in this labyrinth of sorrow? His fingers grazed a dusty dresser, the texture rough and splintered. He had to search, there wasn't time to waste. What if he was too late? As he rifled through the drawers, a terrible feeling settled into his stomach. No matter where he turned, the darkness felt closer, waiting, watching. Could he uncover the mystery without losing himself? Suddenly, something cold and hard slipped from his hand, a locket. He held it up, heart thumping. This could be it, the link to the truth. But just then, shadows surged, and the whispers grew louder. You're running out of time, Jimmy. The weight of the necklace in his palm felt like fate. Would it reveal the truth, or seal his fate among the lost souls? He took a breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. There was no turning back now. With resolve, he made his way back to the nursery. Time was ticking, and fear was no longer an option. Jimmy felt his heart thunder as he clutched the locket tightly, the metal cool against his palm. But with every passing second, the shadows in the corners of the nursery seemed to swell, pulsating with annoyance, threatening to close in on him. What was in the locket? Was it just an empty promise, or was it a key to the boy's soul? He hesitated, torn between dread and determination. Would he dare to open it? A whisper curled around him again, thick like smoke. Open it, find the truth. But who was whispering? The room felt alive with unseen eyes. Gritting his teeth, he flipped the locket open. His breath caught as he peered inside. A picture of a smiling boy stared back at him, his laughter seemingly locked away in time. The other half bore a tarnished inscription, 3 simple words: forever binds us. The words twisted inside Jimmy like a knife, revealing a truth that cut deeper than he anticipated. Just then, something began to stir behind him, a rustling, slowly growing louder like a storm brewing. Fear clawed at Jimmy's insides, but he couldn't walk away. The girl's cries echoed in his mind, urging him not to ignore the cold chain of fate coiling around him. Please help me, a tiny voice whimpered once more. It was coming from behind the door he first entered. The air in the room felt charged, as if something pivotal was about to break. Jimmy moved to the door, drawing the locket close to his heart, hoping it was enough. He reached for the handle, fingers trembling, and swung the door open. A sudden rush of cold air blasted against him. The hallway lay before him, but it was different now. The walls pulsed with shadows that danced and flickered, whispering secrets he couldn't unravel. Find her, she's close, the voices pleaded in unison, creating an unsettling chorus that set his teeth on edge. He stepped forward, compelled, as images flashed in his mind. He saw the boy, saw the pain in the woman's eyes. What was the truth behind their suffering? A chill ran down his spine. With every creaking step he took, the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, hungry, yearning for his fear. At the end of the hall, he noticed another door, smaller, almost child-sized. It stood ajar, light seeping through the crack, a beacon in a storm of darkness. Could it lead him to the answers he sought? He pushed it open, mouth dry. The small room was littered with drawings. Faded crayons on the walls depicted a beautiful garden filled with flowers and sunlight. Yet, right in the center of it all, was a figure shrouded in darkness, its eyes aglow, watching him. Do you believe? The figure hissed, a voice chillingly sweet, slinking through the air, sending shivers racing across his skin. Who are you? Jimmy stammered, but he felt himself drawn forward, an invisible force urging him on. The shadow flickered in response, shape-shifting like gas rolling away from a flame. I am what binds them to the past, to you. You hold the locket. You could break the chains. The walls seemed to react to the figure, trembling as Jimmy tightened his grip on the locket. If he were to free them, he needed to understand the depth of their bond, the weight of those words, forever binds us. Release them, the figure beckoned, a grin plastered across its darkened face, stretching further than should have been possible. What price would he pay for their freedom? Panic threatened to swell within him, but the cries of anguish were louder, woven with urgency and desperation. Do it. Do it now. He swallowed thickly, steeling himself as he knew a decision had to be made. Would he bear the truth? Could he unravel the past and release them from their torment? With a deep breath, he stepped forward, ready to face the unknown consequences of his actions. The darkness thickened around him, swirling, alive. Face the darkness, Jimmy. The shadow echoed, but before he could react, everything shattered. He was plunged into a dreamlike state, a void of nothingness. Only the shouts of the neglected filled his ears. The locket felt heavy in his hand, and then, silence fell. Where was he now? Had he made the right choice? With a jolt, he awoke in a realm that reeked of sorrow and unrealized wishes. The echoes of hope surrounded him, but were they hope or chains? In the distance, a small figure flickered, uncertain, waiting for him to make his move. What will you do, Jimmy? Every nerve in his body urged him to find out. Jimmy blinked rapidly, disoriented by the kaleidoscope of shadows that wrapped around him, shifting like smoke. Each small movement sent ripples through the gray mist, and he felt as if he could touch the sorrow itself. But there was someone waiting ahead, shimmering with an energy that pulled at him like a magnet. Hey! He called out, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. Who are you? The figure turned slowly, outlines blurred by the dim light. As it stepped closer, Jimmy felt his breath hitch. It was a girl, small and fragile, her eyes wide with an expression of both fear and wonder. Are you here to help us? She asked, her voice barely a whisper, but the weight of it pressed heavily on his chest. Us? He took a cautious step forward, the heaviness of the locket in his pocket juxtaposed by the desperation in her gaze. Who else is here? She hesitated, then glanced back toward the encroaching shadows. The others, they're trapped. They can't move on. Jimmy's heart sank. Why? What's keeping them here? The darkness, she murmured, her small hands fisting at her sides. Not all darkness is bad, but this it wants to hold on to them. It feeds on their pain. You hold the key. He fingered the locket again, as if its very presence could spark a revelation. What kind of power did it possess? What kind of key? He pressed, urgency threading his words. The truth, she breathed. You must reveal it. Instinctively, Jimmy felt the fear crawl back into his bones. Truth felt like a double-edged sword, sharp enough to cut but dangerous enough to bleed. What do you mean? Before she could respond, a low rumble erupted from the mist, a sound like grinding metal that made the ground beneath him tremble. The shadows around him coiled tighter, hungrily pulsating as if they were alive, feeding off his hesitation. Jimmy! The girl shouted, reaching for him. You have to trust the locket. It's the only way to break their chains. But how could he trust a trinket that seemed more curse than blessing? Memories of the boy in the picture, the anguished cries of the girl, it all wrapped around him like a vice. Once you open it, everything will be clear. She pleaded, her eyes pleading and bright. You will see their pain and you will understand how to set them free. In a way, her words felt like a lifeline, yet another part of him trembled at the thought. Would uncovering their truth cost him something he wasn't ready to give? Heart racing, he glanced back into the swirling darkness. The shadows were waiting, hungry for him to falter. With a deep breath, he made up his mind. He would bear their truth. Whatever it was, he couldn't stand by any longer. He rushed the locket out of his pocket, the metal throbbing with potential. I'm doing this, he said firmly. I'll help you help everyone. Open it. She implored, her voice filled with unmasked hope. Open it now. He thought of the smiling boy, the cries that echoed through the heavy air. All it took was one single push. With a trembling hand, he flipped the locket open, feeling the heat of revelations wash over him. The moment it sprang open, a blinding light erupted, scattering the shadows like falling stars. His breath caught as images burst forth, clarity flooding his senses. Memories that weren't his own unfurled before him, an undeniable story woven with threads of laughter and tears. He felt the weight of grief, the echoes of loss pounding against his heart, and then a voice broke through, strong and fierce. "You've unlocked it, Jimmy. But can you face what you've unleashed?" As darkness clawed back, the girl with wide eyes held his gaze, her expression a mix of awe and caution. What is it?" he asked, his body shaking. With the shadows swirling around them, he realized he might have opened a path he wasn't ready for. "Now," she said slowly, "you must decide, will you embrace the truth or run from the darkness?" The choice loomed heavy as the shadows surged forward, threatening to swallow them whole. What awaited him in the depths of that truth? Would it set them free or ensnare him forever? In the face of uncertainty, Jimmy stood frozen, heart pounding, knowing that the next step could seal his fate or perhaps set them all free. The blinding light from the open locket enveloped Jimmy, making his heart race even faster. He found himself enveloped in a whirlwind of sensations, flooding memories, faces of people laughing and crying, shadows flickering at the edges of his vision. Among them, one face stood out, a boy with bright eyes and a beaming smile, reaching out toward him as if asking for help. "Jimmy!" The girl cried again, her voice strained against the encroaching shadows. "Remember your heart. It will guide you." But for every joyful face, there were sorrows that clawed at him, twisting his insides. The laughter turned to screams, the smiles to anguish, tearing through his mind like jagged edges. He was suffocating in their pain. "Stop!" he shouted, trying to regain control of his thoughts amid the chaos. But the images surged back, relentless. His hands clutched the locket, the heat pulsing against his palm, reminding him of its purpose. "Fight it!" the girl urged, stepping closer, her own form trembling against the darkness. "You have the power to choose what stays and what goes. Focus on them, their truth." He could see the light that connected each face, a web of emotions that included both love and despair. He felt their love for something lost, the weight of unfulfilled dreams binding them here. It gave strength to his determination. With a deep breath, he closed his eyes, trying to sift through the memories, find the truth that would set them free. "Tell me," he urged the locket, feeling his pulse quicken. "What do you want me to see?" As if in response, echoes rang in his ears, fragments of whispers piecing together. Help, dreams trapped within pain let go. Opening his eyes, a new clarity washed over him. He understood now that these souls were yearning for release but were held back by their own grief, their own regrets. The shadows throbbed with more force, as if enraged by his realization. They twisted, coming alive, reaching for him, hungry, restless. "You have to go now," the girl yelled, her voice slicing through the haze. "You must embrace their truth, Jimmy. Before it's too late." "Embrace it," he echoed softly, feeling an odd determination in those words. He couldn't run, they needed him. He had to be the bridge between their truth and freedom. Taking another deep breath, he focused on the boy's face, vibrant and alive, the pain locked in his gaze melting away. With a surge of resolve, he cried out, "You are not defined by your pain. You can let go." The darkness shrieked around him, a cacophony of sorrow and anger, but he stood firm, letting the memories of hope and love flood his heart. He reached out, his voice stronger now. "You're not trapped. You're worthy of peace. Release your bonds." A moment of stillness settled, as if the very air held its breath. Then, a chord of energy burst like a bomb, and the shadows convulsed in retreat, spilling forth a kaleidoscope of light. Faces began to shimmer, their expressions transforming from anguish to relief, and with each heartbeat, another soul broke free. "Thank you," the girl whispered, tears glistening in her eyes as she watched the shadows loosen their grip. But suddenly, a deep rumbling sounded again, sending a shockwave through the ground, intensifying the turbulence around them. "Jimmy!" she shouted, pulling him back, fear creeping into her voice. "Not everyone will be freed, not yet. The darkness is stronger than you think." He hesitated, wide-eyed as shadows gathered for one last strike, dark and ominous. "What do we do?" he stammered, panic rising in his throat as he braced himself. What had the locket really unlocked? "Fight it!" the girl yelled fiercely, ducking beside him as the shadows threatened to close in. "Don't let it take you too." But in the midst of the chaos, dark whispers seeped into his thoughts, laced with familiar sadness, testing his resolve. What had he truly unleashed? Would courage lead them to victory, or would the darkness claim him too? As the light trembled around them, Jimmy's heart thudded louder than ever, racing toward an unseen goal, a truth yet uncovered, a struggle he had never anticipated. What would he have to confront next? The shadows closed in, a swirling mass of darkness that pulsed with a life of its own. Jimmy felt the cold grip of fear tightening around him, squeezing his chest like a vice. The girl beside him shuddered, her eyes wide with both dread and determination. "Think of the faces," she urged, her voice straining as the dark whispers crescendoed. "That boy, remember his smile." He focused desperately. The boy's face flickered in his mind's eye, softening the storm raging around him. Jimmy could almost hear the joyous laughter that once echoed with innocence. He needed to believe that joy still existed beneath the shadows. Half-formed images pressed against him, demanding to be seen. But the dark energy writhing on the edges stretched out, nearly swallowing his thoughts whole. Each whisper felt like ice slithering into his veins, each memory a razor slicing at his resolve. "No. You can't have me," he shouted, feeling the heat of the locket flare again, blazing defiantly. He grasped it tighter, the warmth fighting against the encroaching cold. "I want to let you take me." The girl looked at him, her gaze fierce and resolute. "You have the power, Jimmy. Accept the truth. Let it lead you." Breathing deeply, he cast aside the anguish clawing at him. "What truth?" he shouted into the tempest, demanding an answer. "Show me." The shadows hesitated. It was a brief moment, but in that pause, something shifted in the air. Faint echoes of laughter pierced through the anguish, rising above the despair. The joy was faint, but like sunlight breaking through a storm, it cast a glow on the darkness. Suddenly, vivid memories surged forward like a flood. The joy, the love, the moments lost but not forgotten came alive and resonated through him. He saw children playing, parents laughing, lives woven together with threads of happiness. Each moment felt like a heartbeat, each laughter a push against the suffocating gloom. With each memory, he felt a new strength washing over him. "You are alive," he shouted, channeling energy back into the locket. "You are worthy of peace. Don't surrender to the darkness." The cacophony of shadows hissed, recoiling as if scorched. Jimmy could feel the shadows falter, tremors of doubt amplifying their fear. Yet in the depth of his spirit, another face began to emerge, torn between worlds. A girl with tear-streaked cheeks and haunting eyes seldom seen, desperately reaching for something beyond his grasp. "The truth," he murmured, his heart racing with recognition. That familiar sorrow, it pulled at him, aching within his core. "Help her," the girl beside him cried. "She's trapped, just like the others. You can set them free." The shadows whipped around him, threatening to drag him into their depths. But if he could help just one more, if he could find the strength to face the pain again, he would do it. He could feel the locket's heat near boiling now, as if it were alive, sensing the urgency of the moment. "Hold on," Jimmy shouted, forcing his will toward the girl he recognized through the shrouded memories. "You are not alone. I see you. I'll help you." But just as he reached out, an unearthly wail erupted from the shadows, a deafening roar of rage unfurling like a storm. The earth trembled beneath him, the shadows surged back stronger than before, turning toward him with a fury that threatened to engulf everything. "What is it?" he gasped, feeling the walls closing in again, pushing against his resolve like a vice. "What do you want?" The darkness writhed, contorting, forming a monstrous visage that hovered before him. Eyes that glistened with torment, mouths twisted into cruel mockery. "We want your pain. Your fear. It feeds us." It boomed, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Desperation clawed at him. He couldn't succumb now. The strength of those he freed still pulsed within him. He tightened his grip on the locket and demanded, "Then take my fear, but you will not take my hope." As the voices howled, an eruption began, and the very fabric of the shadows seemed to unravel, but with every ounce of courage lighting his heart, Jimmy readied himself for a confrontation that could either shatter him entirely or set both him and the lost souls free. Would courage be enough to face the darkness? Could he find the truth hidden within the haunting visage that threatened to swallow him whole? Did he truly have the power to reshape the very core of despair? The shadows roared, a terrible sound that seemed to echo from the very depths of despair. Jimmy's heart raced as the monstrous visage loomed closer, its eyes filled with an insatiable hunger. Sweat trickled down his brow, and he could feel the heat of the locket pressing against his palm, urging him forward. "Face your fear," the girl beside him shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. "Embrace it. Only then can you set them free." He had to believe. The laughter that once resided in his memories felt like a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting him to the light. Gathering every ounce of courage, Jimmy inhaled deeply. The air was thick with dread, but somewhere in the depths of his mind, hope flickered. "I will not be a vessel for your darkness," he shouted, his voice resonating with a newfound strength. The shadows writhed violently, but he stood firm, the heat of the locket radiating from him like a shield. Suddenly, the faces of lost souls filled his mind, children who once played, families torn apart, and the girl with tear-streaked cheeks who desperately reached for something beyond his grasp. Their pain became his, but so did their hope. "You are not alone," he yelled again, projecting his thoughts beyond the monstrous facade. "You are worthy of love. You are worthy of freedom." The ground trembled as the shadows recoiled, their mocking laughter turning into agonizing cries. "Fool!" the dark figure hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "Your hope is a lie. It is your pain that gives us power." Pain surged through Jimmy, slicing at him like shards of glass. Memories of anguish swirled around him, faces he had lost, moments he couldn't save. But from that raw despair, something awakening inside him pushed back with all its force. "I refuse to be defined by my pain," he bellowed, his heart swelling with defiance. "If my pain feeds you, then I will transform it. I will turn my anguish into strength." With those words, a brilliant light radiated from the locket, illuminating the shadows. They twisted and snarled, shrieking in agony as the light engulfed them. But it wasn't just his will that ignited the flame, it was the combined essence of those he cherished, their memories, and their laughter flooding forth in a vibrant tapestry of energy. Jimmy felt the temperature rise, warmth penetrating the icy grip of fear that had held him captive for far too long. The darkness thrashed violently, a tempest of shadows and despair battling against the surge of brilliance. "Let them go," he commanded, channeling every free moment, every cherished smile into the heart of that light. There was a chaotic rippling as figures began to emerge from the shadows, filling the space with ethereal light. Faces once lost transformed into forms of beauty and hope, stepping out into the world that Jimmy fought to protect. The girl who urged him on joined them, her tears now replaced with a glimmer of joy. "We are free," they cried, their voices harmonizing with his newfound resolve, but the darkness, wounded and furious, lunged at Jimmy with all its fury. It lashed out, slashing through the light, determined to reclaim its victims. "Your hope is fleeting," it hissed, clawing at his spirit as panic surged within him again. "No," he shouted, feeling the pressure engulf him, despair clawing once more at the edges of his soul. His heart pounded, the darkness threatening to drown out the light he fought for. He had felt it before, lost, alone, adrift in pain. But now he had the warmth of those he had freed, a force greater than fear that surged through him. This ends now. He roared, forcing every ounce of his being into a brilliant flare, a sunburst of hope. Could this force be enough to vanquish the shadows? Would his unleashed hope be able to break the cycle of despair? The answer hung in the air. As the struggle intensified, the fate of both Jimmy and the lost souls balanced on a knife's edge. Was delivering freedom possible, or would he fall prey to the darkness that craved his despair? The air crackled with energy as the darkness surged again, a tidal wave of anguish crashing against Jimmy's resolve. He could feel his heart pulsing in rhythm with the desperate cries around him. "You are stronger than this," the girl shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't give in." With a deep, ragged breath, he refocused, turning the pain he had endured into an unshakable foundation for his strength. He didn't want memories of sorrow to drag him down anymore. They had become a chain that held him, but now, he would turn that chain into a lifeline. "I see you," he yelled, forcing his voice through the cacophony of shadows. "I see your sorrow. But I also see your hope." Light began to break free from within him, radiating warmth and brilliance. It poured out like sunlight, chasing away the shadows, blinding the darkness that roiled before him. He could feel its raw fury, but the light was unyielding, fueled by every ounce of strength he possessed. "Let them go," he commanded again, the locket glowing fiercely in his hands. "You fed off their fear for too long. It's time to release them." With that proclamation, memories flooded his mind, reminding him of joy and laughter. Images of children running in the sun, families sharing meals, and evenings filled with love, all these moments tethered by the bonds of hope intertwined with the sorrow of loss. Each memory fueled him, shining brighter, louder, until the shadows screamed in rage. "No!" the monstrous figure bellowed, writhing as the light closed in. "You think your light can extinguish me? I am the depths of despair. I am your fears made flesh." But Jimmy stood his ground. "You are nothing compared to the power of love and hope. You will not consume me, or them." The shadows recoiled, the contrast between light and dark stark. Jimmy's hands trembled as he held the locket, pushing the profound warmth toward the darkness. "This ends now." With a final plunge of courage, he pointed the locket directly at the darkness, summoning every ounce of energy within him. Light erupted forth, a beacon that sliced through the last vestiges of despair, shattering the silence with a radiant explosion of color and warmth. The shadows screeched, twisting, straining against the force of light until they finally began to dissolve, melting away like wax under the summer sun. Whispers echoed, fading into an haunting crescendo. The tormented souls he had encountered rushed toward the light, their dark chains shattering before them as their laughter rose in unison, a joyful symphony of freedom. The little girl, glowing with pure light, reached out to him one last time before dissipating into the brilliance. "You helped us. Thank you." And it all vanished, leaving Jimmy standing alone in a quiet expanse, heart thumping wildly in his chest. The locket, now warm and shimmering, pulsed gently in his palm, a reminder of victories won, souls freed, and a truth that had finally been embraced. He had faced darkness and emerged into the light. Just then, a realization washed over him. Not only had he freed the souls of Maplewood, but he had also freed himself from the weight of grief and fear. His heart lightened, the oppressive gloom of the house lifting away. As he stepped out into the crisp night air, stars blinked brightly overhead, twinkling like promises of new beginnings. He could hear laughter drifting from far away, echoes of joy that filled Maplewood once more. Jimmy took a deep breath, filled with newfound purpose and the echoes of hope. He knew there would always be shadows, but now he was ready to face them, armed with the light of love both for others and for himself. With a smile breaking across his face, Jimmy walked home. It was a home now filled with warmth and connection, one that he cherished deeply. Because sometimes, darkness comes, but so does light. It all depends on your choice to seek it out, to fight for it. Thanks for being part of this journey. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Hit that red button immediately. And smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Now, I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. Your voice matters so much in this community. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep spreading this message of hope and resilience together.